Hello and welcome to Ph06 lessons. Today we are going to be talking about blood vessels, the little tubes that carry blood around our body. So in these blood vessels, now the blood is going to be circulating, we're going to have the cells, we're going to have the plasma, everything that you saw that you have in the blood before. And now we are going to be carrying it around. One kind of blood vessel are arteries. You probably heard about arteries before. We talk about arteries. Sometimes you may even know, no, yeah, damaging an artery can be very dangerous because arteries, they carry blood away from the heart. The heart pumps, the blood moves away from the heart, and because of that, it's going to be moving in high pressure. So the pressure of an artery in a person with normal blood pressure will be 120 millimeters of mercury, which is the contraction pressure of the ventricle. So it will be having a high blood pressure, and therefore it's going to be having a pulse. Arteries, they dilate a little bit to accommodate this high blood pressure that once in a while passes through them. The pressure of an artery goes from 120, the maximum, and 80 in the minimum. So it is high blood pressure. Okay. Veins, on the other hand, they are different kind of blood vessels. They are equivalent to arteries, but instead of moving blood away from the heart, they move blood towards the heart. So basically, in veins, the blood is going to be returning to the heart after being passing through different parts of the body. It's going to be having a low pressure because it has been in a very, very, very big network of capillaries, and then is draining back like a slow river flowing into the heart again. Okay, so the blood there is going to be flowing, is not going to be pulsing or dilating. And in between arteries and veins, you're going to have the capillaries, which are tiny little blood vessels that are in between arteries and veins. So arteries become smaller arteries, smaller arteries, smaller arteries, smaller arteries, capillary. And then capillaries becomes tiny little veins, becomes bigger veins, bigger veins, bigger veins, bigger veins, and then go back to the heart. Okay? They have a very low blood pressure, and they must allow diffusion. They must allow stuff to go in and out of the blood. Therefore, capillaries are very, very, very thin, and they are also with a very thin wall. So they are single celled. Okay, we'll see this in a little bit more detail in a while. So now let's take a look on arteries. Let's focus on arteries. This here is a cross section and a longitudinal section of an artery. You can see here that you have an elastic lamina. It is a place that dilates in order to accommodate the high blood pressure and the pulse. Okay, we have strong muscles here. The arteries walls, they are very thick in relation to equivalent veins walls because they have this lot of muscle to withstand high blood pressure, and it can also regulate blood pressure a little bit. They can contract, they can dilate, so they can change a little bit the flow of blood in them. Okay, they have a small lumen in comparison to an equivalent vein that allows fast flow, high pressure, like a hose that you squeeze a little bit and the water flow very fast. So that is the idea. There is no need for valves. Because of high blood pressure, blood cannot flow back. The only exception for this rule are the pulmonary artery and the aorta artery, that inside the heart they have the semilunar valve. So when the heart pumps, the blood leaves the ventricles and they get into the pulmonary artery and the aorta. And for the blood not to flow back to the heart, there are semilunar valves. But those are valves of the heart, not valves of arteries. Okay, so this here is a look on an artery. They have this kind of structure. And the main thing is that they look very thick in relation to the lumen, in the relation to the light that you have here inside of them. Okay, if you take a look on veins, they are going to be also a tube, but they are going to be different. Okay, there is no elastic because they suffer compression. They may be squeezed, but they don't dilate. This will allow the secondary heart, that is going to be allowing a different kind of pumping, but you see that in a moment. And the key point here is that they have a thin muscle layer. There are muscles, but very, very, very thin, because they don't withstand high blood pressure. They have a very wide lumen. So the lumen here is quite wide because the blood here flows slowly and low pressure. So they have a bigger volume of blood, but flowing slowly, while arteries have a small volume of blood at a certain moment, but because of high blood pressure, in the end, the volumes that are flowing through both of them are quite equivalent, okay? And very important, veins have valves. Because of low pressure, because the artery the veins may be squeezed, the blood would move back, and that's not wanted. Now you want the blood to flow forward, going to the direction of the heart, to be pumped again and again and again. And then for avoiding backflow, we have valves inside of our veins. If you put them side by side, you see here the main characteristic of the arteries is that they have a thick wall. You see how thick they are in comparison to a thin wall on the vein. And they have a narrow lumen in comparison to the very wide lumen here of the vein. And of course, veins have valves and the arteries don't have valves. Those are the two big characteristics. Here we see a cross-section of an artery and a vein that are of equivalent function, equivalent size. And as you can see here, the diameter of the artery is, the thickness of the artery wall is much bigger. So they have a thick elastic with a narrow lumen, and the vein is going to be having a thin wall, non-elastic wall, and they are going to be having a wide lumen. Okay. If you are asked to draw it, of course, don't need to be doing that three-dimensional crazy drawing. Basically, you can draw it in a cross-section. In the artery, you look like a little donut. It has a narrow lumen, it has a thick wall, muscle and elastic, okay, and there are no valves in there. While when you draw veins, they look like a ring. They are going to be having a wide lumen, they have a thin wall, and they may have, depending on the cross-section, a valve. Valves are there, but sometimes in the cut you don't see the valve. But if you're going to be representing a vein, it's a good idea to draw valves in there. So this is the representation in drawing of an artery and of a vein. One characteristic that's interesting about veins and the valves, that the valves actually are not only to prevent backflow. The valves allow something else to happen. It allows your muscles, when they are moving to do exercise, to promote blood flow as well. Whoa, how come that can happen? So first thing, how valves work. Let me change this for red. And we have here blood is flowing freely in that direction. But when the blood tries to flow this way, they close the valves by pushing them together, and the blood don't flow in that direction. So basically here the blood is flowing that way, but cannot flow back. As a result, when your muscle, when they squeeze and they get contracted, they increase the volume over there, they squeeze veins, and because the blood cannot flow back over here, the blood flows in that direction. So basically by doing exercise, you make your blood to flow faster back to the heart. And when receiving blood in the heart responds, say, okay, I got already a lot of blood and I didn't contract yet, so maybe I should speed up a little bit of this contraction. So the heart responds, increasing up its speed by the volume of blood that's flowing back by this auxiliary heart. When the muscles that are around the vein, they contract, they squeeze blood in the direction of the heart, making the auxiliary heart or secondary heart, which is actually quite interesting because when you're exercising, you need more blood to flow, and by exercising, you make the blood to flow toward your heart, and then the heart does its job, pumping to the lungs, and then getting the blood and pumping back to the tissues, okay? So this is the idea. Muscle contraction itself helps in pumping blood faster around. Okay, so one more example here. Not contracted, the valves are quite closed, the blood is flowing slowly over there, but when the muscles are contracted, the blood cannot flow back, so it can only flow in one direction. So you push the blood back into the heart. Okay? And then let's talk about capillaries. Capillaries are very, 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 very thin. So this here is a view of a capillary. Basically, they are endothelial cells, just the little inner skin of blood vessels, and they are 1 cell thick. If we draw there a capillary, they will be 1 cell thick. They're going to have a very narrow lumen. They're going to have a very low blood pressure. They're not going to have valves, and they have usually, now here, 1 cell thick, and they have the width of a red blood cell. So basically, in here, it's usually enough to pass 1 red blood cell, which is a quite small blood cell that we have in our body. So here is a diagram of capillary cut. You have here kind of a capillary wall. Here you have another cell. It's just 1 cell thick. So the nutrients or the gases, they only need to cross 1 wall, 2 membranes very close together to be able to get in or out of the capillaries. And the idea is this: an artery becomes an arteriole that becomes smaller arteries, and then it becomes a capillary. And then you have a very big capillary network, a lot and lots of capillaries, and those capillaries start draining into little veins, and bigger veins, and a venule that becomes a big vein, and then it goes back to the heart. This is the idea of the transport. And in here, in this area here, is where the exchange of material is going to happen in your tissue. Oxygen is going to be leaving the blood to oxygenate your tissues. Carbon dioxide will be moved out of the tissues. Glucose in, or in the intestines, the glucose absorbed into capillaries. So capillaries, they are the ones that are in between arteries and veins. Okay? And you just learn how to draw arteries. You learn how to draw veins. Now let's learn how to draw little capillaries. The problem with drawing little capillaries is that they are very small, so you're going to be drawing them out of scale. So basically, it's something like that, just 1 cell thick, and of course, they are not into scale. And you have there 1 epithelium, 1 cell thick, and it's a very narrow lumen, usually the thickness of 1 red blood cell, the width of 1 red blood cell. Okay, this is the idea. So now that you know about arteries, veins, and capillaries, we are going to put this all into work to try to understand the idea of moving stuff around into our body. So take your time now, do a little quiz, and I'll see you in class. Bye-bye.